By the way, that's how old we are. For anybody who might be listening who understands like what makes the middle-aged millennial is when STD results came via mail.
Everyone, I have to introduce you to my oldest and probably my favorite friend. Don't tell anybody else. Josh McCown. Introduce yourself.
Hi, nice to meet you. Well, not meet you, but see you again. Sarah and
Yes.
I know, have known each other since junior high.
15 years old. You were probably one of the first friends I made when I moved out here to Arizona.
We've swapped places now that I live in Chicago.
I know, but we're probably going to get a place there because we had so much fun with you.
I would love that.
That's what was so neat. And Drew and I couldn't get over. It was like no time had passed. Seeing you, you know what I mean? It was like we picked right back up, and it was just, you were our Josh. You were just older, and we were Sarah and Drew, just older.
You know what's funny about that is I was thinking about it a couple of days ago when I knew I was going to be on with you this morning. And if I think of the number of friends that I have, a lot of them come from that period of time, which you think, who makes friends in junior high school and college and then keeps them 20 years later. And so I think it's more a testament to just the quality of friendships that have tested time versus just sort of surface level.
Oh, definitely. You were my soul sister. Like that was, I think that we both just had this thing. Like when you and I got, like, look at this picture. Look at how adorable we were.
Oh my gosh. Where were we for that?
We were at Goodwill. You and Megan were coloring and you were sitting in those little chairs and we got a picture of your ass. And then these were your Chanel glasses that you were so proud you got, your Chanel glasses.
I still have those actually.
Well,
you know what's funny?
classic.
So they're Coach. And do you remember and this is actually an appropriately timed conversation because so Sarah and I graduated from high school in 2003. And so think late 90s, early 2000s, quiet luxury was really Coach and Dooney and Burke. Well, I bought all that crap with my student loan money instead of paying for books. And then a couple of years ago, I took all of it to like Blue Buffalo to sell it. And I go in and they're thumbing through it and they're looking. And Coach hadn't yet become sort of popular again. And they were like, we think this is all fake. Where did you get it all? And I was just like, what do you mean? Where did I get? Like, I'm 30. Like what? I bought it. I was alive when it was cool.
They're like, okay, Grandpa.
Yeah, they didn't take any of it, so I still have all of it.
That's it. Hey, the idiots. Okay, so let's hear your favorite Mama Rose story.
Oh gosh, my favorite Mama Rose story. I'll share one. There are two that come to mind. One I wasn't there for that you relayed, so that's sort of a third-party characterization. And then there's one that I experienced live, and it was somehow related to Mama Rose's work, but she was connected to somebody who was going to be on a reality TV show, and I can't remember which show it was. Do you remember what
Survivor.
it was? Which show it was?
It was Survivor.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Oh my gosh, we have to find which and I'll tell you, one of my closest friends was on Survivor a couple of seasons ago, so that's I don't think that came up when you were here. But
way to drop the bomb right now. Just low key, talk about quiet luxury. Talk about quietly dropping like a bomb.
So you said, hey, we're going to this viewing party, and it's at this, where we grew up, it was sort of, before it was developed, it was all these like kind of custom home neighborhoods, and you're like, it's at this crazy mansion. You definitely have to come. And so I went to your house and rode with your parents, and your mom drove. And honestly, it's like that scene from Cruella de Vil where she finds out that the dogs are being saved, the lit cigarette, the coat, and just like, no red light for Mama Rose. And it was just like a bat out of hell. But looking around the car, none of you were fazed, as if it were just completely normal. This is how we go to the grocery store. The other story was we didn't have cable growing up. And so you watched Sex and the City live. I saw it years later streaming. And I remember your mom sort of shaming you for wearing a thong. And it's like it was haha at the time, but it's even funnier now because you think of like, we were pretty good kids. Like, sure, maybe we drank underage, but like we studied in school, like we weren't drug users. Like you think of all the things that like could cause your life to spiral, and like to be focused on like a thong was like, looking back now, you're like, oh my gosh, that's nothing.
That's classic her. And she didn't just shame. She would go, sluts wear thongs, Sarah. Sluts. Are you a slut? And then I also remember when we went to that mansion the first time, you didn't come. And my mom and dad were gushing over everything. And I was so embarrassed. I remember I called my boyfriend. I was like, they were acting like such trash. They didn't act cool at all. They acted like they'd never been in a fucking mansion before. Like, who the fuck was I? Because let me tell you, when I got in another mansion when I was older, I was like, this is so nice. So my apologies, Mama Rose, for that one.
And by the way, it turns out it was a nice house, but it wasn't a mansion.
No, I know. And I think it was like the third or fourth season that it was like 2003. So it was like the fourth season of Survivor. And it was like a coworker's son.
Who didn't end up winning, I don't think, right?
No, he got kicked off. But I do remember that my mom was like, her husband's black, but it's okay because he takes care of her. So Sarah, if you ever find a black man that'll take care of you, you can marry him. But then she also said, but I also won't know how to do my grandbaby's hair. So I don't know if that's a good idea. And let me tell you, she had 2 grandsons. She never once did their hair. I don't know why she was so concerned.
So after undergrad, right, I moved to Atlanta, and, there's all the stereotypes about the South and how folks feel about different races. And it's like, I feel like Mesa was, growing up, white, Mormon, like kind of small-minded, where like something I think you and I always had in common was like bigger aspirations, saw a bigger universe than Mesa, Arizona.
Yeah, exactly. That's why we are where we are right now and why we're still friends, honestly. I think the people that have no ambition, you kind of don't have anything in common anymore.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I know with Drew, your husband, and even your career, it was what seemed to be a common thread was that there was always like, how are we going to do more, do better, and not just be the people that did the same old wherever we grew up.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. You and I wanted out. We wanted more. You were getting the coach. I was using my book money on outfits from Abercrombie for dates.
Which is also back in trend. So if anything, I think our style and our taste, talk about standing the test of time.
Oh, and improving. I feel like the shit, especially once I got that boutique job. I was like, look at me. I am Carrie Bradshaw. Oh, speaking of which, okay. I got these glasses because she has them on her show. But I came out of the bathroom and I go, but do I look like Jeffrey Dahmer? And now Drew just says I look like Jeffrey Dahmer. So I need your opinion. Do I look like Jeffrey Dahmer in these glasses?
No, you look more like Carrie Bradshaw than Jeffrey Dahmer.
Thank you. See, yes, that's why we're friends. Fucking Josh. Or fucking Drew.
Yeah.
Fucking Josh is amazing.
Glasses, but you don't look anything like Jeffrey Dahmer.
No, that's what I thought. All right. So I think that you need to tell the story of your Zoom call with your boss, because then we can segue into another dildo story.
Oh my gosh. Well, my first job in Atlanta, I was an accountant for a couple of years, which is wild to think about my career now and that it started as an accountant. And I did it for a couple of years, and I moved to Chicago for the same company. And at the time, it was, hey, we're going to pack you and move you, and this white glove service, and you just need to sit there and watch. And I remember thinking that there were, documents or laptops or things that you don't want people packing and putting on a moving truck. And so I packed a suitcase of just sort of valuables. And 10 days, 2 weeks later, the moving truck shows up and they just leave the boxes. And so I'm unpacking into a studio apartment, so much smaller space. And it's just sort of triage, get shit in the general vicinity of where it's going to go. And I unpacked the suitcase that I had brought with me, which had included some sex toys. And I just threw them in the bathroom. And I was taking photos to send hey, I missed the team. And I sent them to my then boss, or my old boss, and posted them on Facebook. And I continued to unpack it, and it was actually our friend Gavin who sent me a text, and he said, "Hey, is this a joke?" And I said, "Well, what do you mean? Like, I'm living in a tiny apartment. It's like, it's what I can afford at the time."
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, I'm not talking about like, good luck in Tempe, Gavin. If you're going to judge me,
riding the bus."
Yeah, for real." And he goes, "No, your dildo's on the counter," and it was this like big black dildo. And I'm like, "Oh my God, that's so not funny, Gavin." Well, another friend sent a message, and I'm like, "Oh shit." So I look, and just like the base on the counter, as clear as day, as if it like, it just had a spotlight on it. Well, so what I then realized is I had sent it to my female boss. And
she's like, "Looks like a good time to me."
She never said anything. And it's like, well, I mean, like, I think we could all agree, sister. Okay. So it's like, if anything.
Yeah. She's like, "I know your type. All right. I know it. See that." Well, you're obsessed with dildos. Because remember, we were at Oregano's and we were throwing ice in a candle. And all of a sudden, it was me, you, Megan, and Steve. The side of the candle just like exploded, and there was like wax everywhere. And the manager comes over, and the hand to God, you go, "I don't know what happened. We were just sitting here talking about dildos, and we had not been talking about dildos." So we're like, "That's the lie?" And he's just like, "Just get rid of it."
I had forgotten about that memory. I think it was like growing up and where we grew up, and it was like it wasn't very sex positive. And it's not that my parents were prudes by any means, but it was just like people didn't talk about it. And I think that fascination, you're fascinated with what you don't understand. And then I think like as I became an adult and relationships and sexually active and late college, and after I had moved out, then it was like, oh, like this, there's no need to be obsessed. Like you educate yourself a little bit, that they're not just these sort of like majestic widgets that you have in your bathroom.
No. I don't know. I still love a good dildo. All right. I feel like we have to share the Martin story.
Oh gosh. Remind me, how did we wind up with him?
So it was Gavin's 20th birthday, and we made these sheriff stars with our names on them. And then we went to Dick's Cabaret, which was the only male all-nude strip club in Phoenix. And we walked in and we paid, and we were talking to the guy, and then Martin walked out, and it was like, you want to talk about a spotlight. It was like God shone down on him.
Oh my gosh. I remember feeling so uptight and uncomfortable. So this is like, in me, like dildo obsession era in terms of like, repressed,
sexual.
Yeah. Oh my God. But I remember it being so awkward of like, how do you ask them to like, do you just offer to pay for a dance, or do you, like, what do they do? Like, is this nude? And if we were 20, that means we couldn't drink, which we were just in there to look at the nudity.
Yes.
It's so cringeworthy now, thinking like, having lived, Gavin moved here shortly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and, Gavin moved here a few years later, here to Chicago a few years later. And I think of like the shit we used to do, or like go to the bars. And like, again, as you kind of blossom and stuff. And it's like, to think we were embarrassed by asking a stripper to do their job. Like we were job creators.
Oh, I know. That's it. Well, I remember he walked out and he looked like a young Christian Bale. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, I need to fuck this man. So like, I was like flirting, and he's like, "Oh, the star." And I was so fucking, you talk about stupid and young. I was like, "Oh yeah, I made this sheriff star." And then he danced to "Let's Get Physical" by Olivia Newton-John. And he had the sweatband, the tank top, red shorty shorts, the high socks, and he got full nude. And it was probably the most sexual awakening moment of my life up until then, that I was like, I do want to talk about, I was taking advances on my credit card that was supposed to be my book money just to get lap dances from him. I was like throwing money at him nonstop. And then you're like looking over in the middle and you start hitting me and you're like, "He has a boner. They're not supposed to have boners." You were like staring at his boner.
When is the last time that you went to an establishment like that?
Oh God. Probably then.
Really? Like you never, since your 20s, have not been to a strip bar?
No, I married the idiot at 21 and then was with Drew and had kids. I mean, we're going to go to Puppetry of the Penis in Vegas this year, so bringing it back. But
the classy version of nudity.
Yeah, where they do the hamburger. That's so classy.
I feel like the bars here, you can be semi-nude. And so it was like we sort of just got used to, nudity or being in close proximity with people who are in that profession just at the bar. And so then you kind of become numb. So then it became not special. It just became sort of a fixture.
Well, that was still amazing. And then remember, he was like, hey, he's like humping me. He's like, we go to Denny's after this. Do you guys want to come? And I was like, I have a curfew. I can't. And then Megan kept giving money to the ugly stripper. She's like, I feel bad for him. And then that was the one that Martin cheated on me with, was the ugly stripper. I caught him in bed with him.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, there were Red Flag City where it was like, he had a gay guy that slept on his couch. I'm like, okay, he's just helping out a friend. And then his best friend was this black chick and they had like this witty repertoire. And I was like, cool, okay. And then one day I came out, he's like, come over. And his roommate lets me in and I walk in and he's asleep in the bed and the ugly stripper is sitting there smoking. And he's like, oh yeah, honey, it happened. And I just, I just walked out and went to Fiesta Mall. I think I went and bought a shirt at Abercrombie. I was like in shock. And then he called me and somehow I didn't break up with him and he dumped me a week later. Like that, he was so good looking that I was like, okay.
I remember from that period of time, not for me, because I didn't date until I was like 70, it feels like. But several of us, like relationships were sort of like short, really intense romances.
Yes.
None of us, nobody in the friend group really dated at that period of time anybody that was like good for them. We didn't have any boundaries or any real qualifications that weren't shallow, which is kind of funny. Like, I'm glad that we all developed standards eventually. And your husband is amazing and Gavin's in a fantastic relationship. Same with Megan.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Alex is perfect for her. And we'll find you the perfect man. I'm going to make it happen. That Jake from Naked and Afraid. I think he'd be perfect for you. The cock guy, plus, I think.
He'd be gone for a while, which dovetails nicely with like wanting to be alone to do crossword puzzles.
That's it exactly. And he's hot. Don't worry, I'm going to make it happen. Stephen Lee Hall Jr. has agreed to be on the podcast, who's also on Naked and Afraid. So I'm very adjacent now to it.
I love that.
I'm going to make it happen. I love you, Josh, and I'm going to make your love life soar. That's all you need is a perfect man, because you have the job. Talk about the job.
Yeah, so I got into business right after undergrad, and you could just like these corporate jobs of accounting and finance. And in 2011, my brother had passed away unexpectedly, and it was it's sort of like you can't prepare for something like that mentally. And as part of coping, I was like, well, I'm going to go to grad school, and speaking of being dumb with student loan money, and I went to business school. And then just fell into marketing after. And I think that was sort of the calling that I hadn't ever really thought about and just kind of fell into. And so I've been responsible for selling toys, selling frozen food, canned goods. And then you just kind of get good at it. It's like, how do you get people to buy more cans of chili? It's, it's a very specific skill, but
very useful. And I think that out of anybody, you had the most drive. You were the one that was going to do it. Like, you had your eye on the prize. You were working right after high school at the bank. Like, you were going to do it.
I find myself, this is true of relationships that I've been in or work, in situations that are ambiguous or puzzles or provide a lot of intellectual stimulation, I do well. And this profession strangely provides sort of unlimited just intrigue and curiosity. The danger is going to be like where, and I think this happens or starting to happen as we get older and friends, parents are starting to pass away, and you sort of shift into this classic middle age, which is appropriately part of the title of your podcast, as we're in middle age is what's important, and I don't want to, it's that the intrigue is good and it's fun, but what you don't want to say is 20 years from now, I wish I would have spent more time with friends and family. So how do you, sort of slow down the career a little bit to make room for who's going to be my celebrity reality show host husband? I don't want you to do all the work to get him to agree to be my husband, and then I don't have any time for him.
I know. I'm like, dude, you need to take a break. Use some of his cock money that he gets from his farm. And you can just go and you can take the train and you just leave him to do his stuff on the, he's so hot. I love it. I can't wait for this to happen.
Food related. So then it's farm raised chicken. It's like, it'll be sort of the food supply chain version of the Beekman Boys.
So sexy. You can talk about food costs. Get you going. Oh, so what else? What are some of your favorite stories from us, you think? We had some good ones.
Some of my favorite stories aren't happy stories, but I think it kind of comes back to where we started the conversation of friendships that have tested time. Is there was a lot of sort of, I don't want to say drama, or we went through a lot of shit, my family wasn't, the most functional, not to put other people's business out there, but we all had family stuff at home, and I'll leave it at that. And then, there were times in relationships where people got cheated on or had unfortunate things. And it was sort of, without question, you could pick up the phone and send a text and, hey, I need you, or to hang out. And it was, no questions asked. We were there for each other. And I think that sort of built the bonds. One of my favorite stories, and I think it's okay to share because they're married now, so it ended up working out, was when Gavin's husband Lonnie cheated on him. And the story isn't about Gavin, it's about you and Megan. And I didn't have a playbook for what to do because I wasn't dating. And so it was like, gosh, what do we do? And you and Megan were like, we know exactly what to do. It's like, we're going to honk him. We're going to, we're going to make his life miserable. We're going to send mean text messages. And it was just instantly, you guys showed up, sort of with the infrastructure of exactly what to do to both comfort Gavin, but also signal to his now husband, but boyfriend at the time, about what a piece of shit he was. And it was just without question. Everybody had a job, an assignment that they needed to execute.
Well, do you remember he told Gavin at an Applebee's?
I do remember that.
Because he was worried he would freak out, and Gavin was more upset that he was hearing this news at Applebee's. I think that it was that he was hearing it at all.
I know. At least it should have been at Chili's,
I know, a little clap. But do you remember? Let's put Gavin shit out in the world. Do you remember the guy he lost his virginity to? It was like that weirdo, and he wore a tech vest. I think he wanted to be a pilot, but he wore an Old Navy tech vest. And remember, Gavin was like, I lost my virginity on an air mattress that was slowly losing air to a man that wore a tech vest. Yeah. And I was like, yeah, you sure did. I don't know, man. That's glorious. He's doing great now, but he
turned out okay. Yeah.
Yeah. The tech vest really got him.
Do you remember how you lost your virginity?
Oh God, yes. It was to Dana. He got me a promise ring. Little 4-inch. He was 6'4", and I remember the first time I was going to see his penis, I was like, this is going to be good. And he whipped it out, and I've never been so disappointed instantly. And I kissed him really fast because I didn't want him to see it on my face. But he got me a promise ring, so I lost my virginity to him. And I remember I lit a candle, and I played Celine Dion because I thought that was going to be the sexiest, most romantic, and half of song number 8 on the CD, Falling Into You, and I was no longer a virgin. It was lovely. I think I was wearing my Wednesday day of the week panties, and it was in his basement bedroom. And then I was like, I'm a woman now. Then he dumped my ass. So Megan and I, and it was funny, that's how Megan and I became friends, is I got dumped and she got dumped by Jordan, who ended up directing Kong Skull Island. So she hit the jackpot. I fucked a loser, and she fucked someone that knows Samuel L. Jackson. So I'm very jealous. But we got dumped, and we became friends because of that. And we would go honk, and honking was our favorite thing to do. We would go by their house and just honk. And it sounds so fucking stupid, but it was so therapeutic to just lay on the horn, fuck you. And we would go, and we would drive and then come back and do it. One time we did it to Jordan, her ex-boyfriend, and he ran out of the bushes with a bandana and a cap gun. And he was shooting behind the car like Yosemite Sam. And we're like, what the fuck was that? And the next day in class, he's like, you two need to get a life. And I go, you need to put down the cap gun cowboy. That was fucking weird. And then he like slunk off.
So obviously, I know how I met you and Gavin and Megan, and I think I just knew Drew from classes. Is that how you met Drew? Was just like the circles of friends just kind of overlapped eventually?
Well, it was so funny. My first real friend I made there was Angie, who I'm still friends with, and she wanted to go on a date with this guy Nathan, so she was going to put me on a blind date with Drew. So we went and saw the Sixth Sense on a blind date. And he still remembers that I was like, I told my mom I'd get a hot dog, but I'm not going to. Don't tell her. And he's like, all right, we're starting with lying to your mom. That's cool. And then I talked the whole movie. So he didn't like me. Do you remember, what was her last name? Miranda. She was a cheerleader in the 9th grade with us, Miranda. She had the pig nose.
Yeah. She had, it was like all consonants in the last name is what I remember.
But she had big boobs, so he went for her instead of me.
Because she was so stuck. She was friends with like Suzanne Martos. Like there was like the original Mean Girls squad.
Yes, but we figured out that Suzanne is just kind of. I think Suzanne just is socially awkward. I don't think she was a mean girl. Like now, talking to her as an adult, she's fabulous, and I love her. So I think that we just didn't understand the nuances of personality back then. It was kind of like. But no, Kayla was a mean girl. I have to say, I always thought Kayla was a mean girl.
Well, so I'll tell a funny first date story. Well, so yours ended up working out eventually, you think back now and that blind date, but there was a period of time and I was working at the bank and there was a coworker who was really religious, and just through conversation, and I grew up like we were religious. It was kind of hot and cold. And so I kind of went back to the church and was like, became a God warrior, and
I'm sorry.
I know. Well, look at things have all worked out, things have all worked out. But God, I haven't thought about this in years. Yeah. And I, through another friend, do you remember meeting my friend Chris? He was really tall and thin and like would house sit at that up in the hills.
He's the one that tried to sleep with me twice and couldn't get it up.
Oh, yeah. Well, so this story has two arms to it. One, I learned not too long ago he committed suicide.
What?
In 2011.
He's
and
dead?
I was just like yeah, and it was his mom and my mom, were longtime friends, and that's how he and I became friends. We were friends for 15, almost 20 years, and then you just lose touch with people. And it was like a year ago or so. I was like, whatever happened to him? Is he on Facebook? And then you start Googling, and he had a pretty unique name, and that was when I learned. So it was really sad that happened, and I forgot that you had met him and that we had hung out a handful of times.
It was me, you, Drew, Megan, and our friend Jason Redmond, and it was Jason's birthday. And we went to the house he was house sitting at and got drunk, and we were skinny dipping. And then we were going to go fuck. And Drew was, yes. And we were going to go fuck in the bathroom, but he couldn't get it up. I think he was gay. And then Drew went in and got a picture, and it was of his dick. And then it was when you still had disposable cameras, and you went and did had them develop it, and there's a picture of his dick, and you're like, they're not supposed to do that. And you had a picture of his dick. And then in college we tried again and he couldn't get it up again. And then Megan and I were just drunk puking in the bushes. And then that was the last time I saw him, and now he's dead. I had no idea. This is mind blowing right now.
So he was also very religious. Well, or he himself necessarily wasn't, but his family was. And so he went to a religious high school or whatever. And he set me up on, he gave me the number of some girl, and you chat on the phone, and then we were going to go on a date for the first time. And I remember my mom took me to Walmart to get a nice shirt. Okay, it was Mesa.
One. It was Mesa. Yeah, no, that's not. Yeah, it wasn't your fault.
It was me and her and a couple friend of hers, and so I'm meeting her live for the first time, and we went to go see Titanic. And I remember my mom gave me, the Harkins cup that you could refill for $1. So I had my $1 refill cup. And I was the only one that cried at the end of Titanic.
What?
of the four of us.
They have no souls. How do you not cry at the end of Titanic?
And for the life of me, I can't remember her name, so I have no idea where she's at today. I mean, so that's a blind date story that didn't work out, in contrast to yours that did.
Well, mine took a while, and there was a husband in between it. So, what was your favorite Ryan story? Oh shit! Oh yeah, I can say his name. I just can't say his last name, right?
Yeah, I mean, my ex's name is Ryan. They could be the same person for anybody on the internet who may know. I mean, God, so we both had bad Ryan stories because mine turned out to be MAGA. So, I mean,
Mine is too.
Maybe it was the same person.
God, did he have the saddest, smallest, limp penis you've ever seen? Did it look like he jerked off with self-tanner?
Well, that I have to give praise to the ex for, was that department wasn't a problem. But so I remember yours. I don't even remember how you met your Ryan. In my memory, it was just sort of like he was in the friend group, but I don't remember the how. And then you guys were dating, and he was like, I just remember him being very controlling and immature, and very. We showed love in the friend group, and still to this day, there's an element of like giving each other shit or making fun of one another, but very much like stuff that's deserving. Like, you know, barbs that you or Gavin ever threw, it's like they weren't undeserving and they're funny, but he was always very sensitive to stuff. And I remember I saw a photo of him naked for some reason. I don't remember why. And I made fun of something that was like nobody would ever like take offense to. And he lost his mind and was so upset. And I just remember, like, who gets mad when somebody jokes about that? Because it wasn't, it wasn't like this about the size or anything that like could be hurtful. It was just like some comment, and he had a total meltdown about it.
Well, this is also the man that we were married for 2 years. I got the mail. I opened it up and it was an STD test. And I was like, this is weird. So I go in the house. I'm like, why did you get an STD test? And
by the way, that's how old we are, for anybody who might be listening who understands like what makes the middle-aged millennial is when STD results came via mail.
That's exactly how old we are. Yeah. I was like,
you had enough time to go get another STD by the time you learned that you had one, because that's how long it took.
That was it. And now it's just instant. But yeah, so I go, why did you get an STD test? And he goes, well, remember I bought those used jeans and I wore them without underwear. And I go, Ryan, that's not how biology works. And he goes, I cheated on you. And he started bawling, and he ran out the door like Forrest Gump and just ran down the street.
Were you dating or married?
We were married. We had bought, remember, he made me buy a house because we would fight in the apartment and people called the cops, and he wanted to be able to berate me in private. It was just,
and make money at the same time.
We fucking lost money because this motherfucker had me buy it during the 2008 bubble.
Oh shit.
Yeah. We were upset. We had to file bank. I went to a lawyer when we were getting divorced because he got a lawyer, and she laughed and she goes, honey, file bankruptcy. You guys don't have shit. That was super classy. He drug on the divorce for so long. I literally gave birth to Walker and then had to go to the bankruptcy lawyer with Ryan and show the bankruptcy lawyer pictures of my newborn son and fiance while sitting here with my current husband still. It was the classiest moment of my life. I remember being super proud. I'm like, you've made it, Sarah.
How did you meet Ryan?
I worked at the Limited 2, and I worked with this girl, Amy, and he was friends with somebody Amy knew, and they came in and we kind of like hit it off and we liked each other. And then he love bombed me. He brought me like lunch, or he brought me breakfast at work and a Courtney Love CD. And my mom was really into the prescription pills at that point, and like spent all my tuition money on prescription pills, and I just needed out. So, and his parents were getting divorced. Like his dad basically waited until he was grown, left his mom for his high school girlfriend type situation. Like it was really fucked up. So both of us were not in a good place. And we're like, let's get married. That seems like a brilliant idea. Like that'll solve everything. Because in my mind, I thought, well, I need someone. I can't just move out. Like that would have been the smart move, is to be like, hey, Megan, want to get an apartment? But I'm like, let's just marry the stupidest person I've ever met. That's, as I was walking down the aisle, I was thinking, well, I can always get divorced. You and Steve showed up at the reception.
I remember that. It was at his parents' house?
Yes.
Yeah, I do remember showing up at the reception. We were at the wedding, right? It was in Los Angeles, wasn't it?
Yes, in that like retention pond area.
And Jackie was there. Yeah.
Does anybody even know what's going on with her? Remember, she lied about having cancer, and she would be like mean to Megan, and then none of us ever heard from her again.
We're somehow connected on social media, so occasionally something pops up.
I would love to know what's happening with Prudence Jackie. She was, remember Caramel Macchiato Boy, and she was so like up in arms about him and upset, and she loved him. She was so shitty to Megan. She would message Megan the meanest things and then be like, oh, someone took my phone and did that. Like, Megan's the nicest person in the world. Like, who could ever say anything mean about or to Megan? So I don't respect. She was a pathological liar, but I mean, clearly there was some family shit going on at home. As we're all learning now, we all had family shit. It was just different.
And not as, I mean, and you and I have both been to therapy. Like then it was like, wasn't going to therapy wasn't really talked about. We kind of had to find it on our own. And then, yeah, when you share, it's like, oh, I've been to therapy and here's what I learned. And it's like, oh, so I was strangely normal, but normal because I too had a dysfunctional family.
That's it. And also I think that's another testament to why we're still friends, is you and I both got therapy, and we're still like, you're Josh. You will always be Josh. That's why I love you. But you're this very evolved version that is really impressive. And it's nice to see, because you and I both, I feel like, could have gone either way. We really could have.
Yeah. It's the, again, I think back to, we're the same people in, sense of humor and caring, but have shed some, or a lot of the hate or negative outlook, and still can find the humor. And, really probably the best way to describe it is maybe some of the shame and guilt of, growing up, you think it's your fault or that you're the only one, and it's sort of isolating. And then of course you realize that no, everybody has shit, you need to work through it to sort of then, get to allow yourself to actually be an adult.
Well, and be happy with yourself, because that's who you're stuck with 99% of the time. And really, that's the only person you owe anything to is yourself. Like, I'm sure little Josh is in there and you have to make him happy.
So in thinking, we talk about some of the like dumb shit and funny stories, and to your point of like being, mature, evolved, successful adults, when you think about like, thank God I, went to therapy and did all of these things, are there things from like junior high, high school that you're like, I'm glad I had that experience because here's how it continues to be positive in my life today? I
think all of it, even like the Dana breakup that like was the end of the world. I'm grateful because now I can look and be like, yeah, he was just like my dad. And that was my daddy issues. And I can I was worried I'd always be in love with him, but it's just an appreciation. Like, I love him for being my first love. I'm glad that he was all that, but I don't hang on to it where I'm pining for him or thinking about a life with him. I could honestly see him and be like, hey dude, I hope you're doing well. Like, I hope you're with a spouse and all that. So I think that, and all of it got me here. All the shit, I'm sure you feel the same way, all the shitty things we've been through, we got here and we're doing great. So I can't really hate on, do I wish I got here faster? Of course. But if this was the time, then it's worth it.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I'm grateful for a lot of things. In a strange way, though, there's a part of me, because I moved away after undergrad and like really got the hell out of town, that there's some of me some days that is like, do I need to go back? And are there amends to make live? And not, I think that, there were times where I was shitty to people or mean, and it was, I was insecure, and there are a number of reasons to people. And it's like, how do you sort of atone for like, gosh, I was a real piece of shit to you. How do you make amends? And do you even need to that degree? But it feels difficult sometimes to do that from 2,000 miles away.
Yeah, but I don't, you were never a bad person. Like we were all dealing with what we knew and in our wheelhouse. And we were being hurt, and there was a lot that we didn't know how to describe. And that would come out sometimes being shitty to people. But I think that now that we've all grown up, we understand the nuances of childhood and what our parents put us through. And we kind of all are giving each other, like, it's okay. We forgive each other.
Yeah. I do appreciate that part of sort of the grace of like, and I think that comes from, candidly, the like maturing in therapy and realizing that you had your own shit to work through sort of gives you the space to give other people grace, because it's like, well, they probably did too. And there's no sense in hanging on to, regrets or anger or anything towards people from fucking 20 years ago in high school. It's like
Exactly.
high schoolers are so immature and have no idea who they are. Like, how on earth could you still be upset about something that happened in high school?
Well, and I think that that's kind of an earmark of our generation is I don't feel like my parents ever put themselves in my shoes. If I made a teenage mistake, it was the end of the world. Whereas like Walker, he made a mistake at school and we sat and we're like, we understand, buddy. Your brain is not fully developed. And you made a rash decision. There are consequences through the school. There's nothing we can do about that, but we understand. And we could share stories of when we did something similar. And I think that really helps our relationship with him, because it's kind of like we're all in this together and we get it. And our parents were very authoritative. Don't do that. You're bad. These are the rules. And it wasn't a lot of putting themselves in our shoes.
It's funny you say that, because I talked to Gavin after we had dinner, and he was like, "Oh, well, did you see Sarah and Drew?" And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, I saw them recently. Like, how was it?" And I was like, "Well, what I was most proud is probably the like best word was you and Drew are such amazing parents. And I didn't see you guys parent, but the output was how well behaved and nice and thoughtful your boys were and well adjusted, which kids at that age are a reflection of their parents." And it was just like, oh my gosh, these you would never know that they were that young or just like such gentlemen to be around. And it was like, oh my gosh, these kids, I wish whatever secret sauce you and Drew have going for parenting, it's like more people need to tap into whatever the hell that is.
It's pure honesty with them that we don't know what the fuck we're doing, and we're in it together.
Great, like it's like stop with the facade, but it was just like such gentlemen.
Well, that means a lot. Thank you. I'm very proud of them, but everybody is. Everyone thinks their kids are the best, but I think Drew has been a good father from the jump. The minute that Walker was born, he was in it. He acclimated to it. I mean, and I tell him all the time, you've never let us down once. And I think that he feels bad about stuff he did in the past. And does he need to atone? And he thinks about that a lot. And I'm like, but by being a better person now, you're showing the world, like with you're doing amazing and you're so positive and you don't need to come make amends. You're living your amends every day. That's what you're living it every day and showing that you've changed. And that's all you have to do, because you don't owe anyone anything.
I do try to bring that to work. I'm not a parent, 100 cats, so a cat dad, but I do carry the, you think it's like the sort of Maya Angelou quote of "It's not what you said, it's how you made me feel." And like, having gone through therapy, I think about that as a people leader of like, how am I going to deliver this message and how is this person going to receive it? And I try to be more thoughtful and humane in that experience, just saying, well, what can I learn from, hey, there are times where I made people feel bad. Before you send that note or have that conversation or just interacting with this human, can you be more thoughtful? I'm probably not as nice as I should be when I call AT&T, but we'll get there.
So I have a segment called Bitching with the Bitch. What would you like to bitch about? Because you are my favorite bitch.
What set me off recently? So a couple of things that are all related to it's I struggle when people aren't paying attention to what they're doing. And it shows up in a couple of ways. Ordering at a restaurant or in quick service. You've been standing in line, the menu's in front of you. By the way, it's Dunkin' Donuts. The menu has been the same for 600 years. How are you that slow and not knowing what's going on? And how do you just move through the world? And what's gotten me in trouble is I'll make comments. And as I get older, I'm more likely to be like, do you mind if I go ahead of you? Because I'm just going to be really quick. And just interjecting and, just being kind of direct and sort of calling people on their bullshit and just having no regard for people who are around them. Or it happened yesterday in the grocery store. I was grabbing something and somebody was taking so for this, I live in the middle of Chicago, grocery stores are small. Somebody had 2 shopping carts side by side doing like Instacart orders and must have been doing 2 orders at the same time. Fuck off, number 1. Do that shit at night. 2, what's with the 2 carts? And people are shopping here. And then you're going to be an asshole to me because I move one of the carts so that I can get some baked beans from the bottom shelf. Look at me. I'm buying baked beans. Like, I'm not in a good place. On a Saturday afternoon on my shopping list. Exactly. I'm like, don't. And I wasn't rude. I didn't like throw the cart out of the way. It was like, let me just move it. I'll get my thing. No harm, no foul. So it's like I've learned to just sort of self-correct. But then it's like you cop an attitude. And it's like, number 1, who the fuck are you? And 2, how dare you? How do you, and you and I both kind of, our career started in really the kind of the service industry. I know doing different things, but serving the public in or interacting with the public. Do you feel like you have an issue having worked with the public and knowing like what good service looks like when you get bad service?
Oh, yes. I am a huge fan. I'm not a Karen. I'm a Kiki. Kiki's fun. But Kiki likes good service. And if Kiki doesn't get good service, she will leave a very eloquent 1-star review on Google. In fact, I get notifications from Google all the time. They're like, write more reviews. People like your reviews. So I do. And I love you because I am the same way. But you know what? God help him. Drew is one of those people. He gets a menu at Joe's Farm Grill every time we go. I'm like, we have lived here for 12 years. We go to this restaurant once a week. You know what they have. Why do you need a menu? Like you and I are like, we don't have time for this shit. We are go, go, go. We have places to go, people to do. We are not fucking around. And then these people that are like, dun, 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 dun. I'm like, what the fuck are you doing?
Just make the decision.
Yes, or fucking move your ass out of the way. Like, and then I spiral, and then I'm angry, and then I'm like, well, maybe that's why your ass is so big because you walk so slow. And then I'm like, Sarah, don't say things like that. That's bad. But then that's just where you go because it is like time is valuable, and if you don't understand that, good luck.
I think what infuriates me the most is it's just like the lack of consideration of. Now, by no means, I'm not the Dalai Lama and I'm not Mother Teresa and I'm not, this is not about to describe how I am in those ways, but I do try when I'm doing things out in public and in the world to just do a quick pulse check. Is what I'm doing interrupting somebody else's something? Am I being loud on the phone? Am I in somebody's way? If I'm crossing a crosswalk, I get off my phone and quickly move through the crosswalk just because it's a tiny thing I can do to just be a little more considerate. And I just get so infuriated when people just don't seem to have any sense that people are living their lives around them. Again, baked beans on a Saturday afternoon. I'm not great.
And you are though. Like the growth I'm seeing in you is so impressive. And I have to say, one of my favorite memories is you and I were it was like a Saturday night. We had no other plans. We're like, let's go see a movie. And you and I went and saw Sleepover. And we were like in college and it's a movie about them going into high school. And remember they're doing the scavenger hunt, the little green car. And like by the end, it was all about like friendship and stuff. And you and I are just the only ones in the theater, like crying and holding hands. And we're like, we'll be friends forever. Like that's what always seemed to happen is you and I would end up together like holding hands, listening to like Time After Time and like singing to each other.
Well, again, we called the trends. I remember you, and one of my favorite memories was I don't remember what was going on, but Kelly Clarkson had just put out her album, right? Because she was the first winner on American Idol or whatever the show was called, and driving around with the windows down and like screaming. It was track 4 on the CD. I remember to this day of just driving, and it's like, look at her now. It's like Kelly Clarkson is such a great human being, and it's like, I don't know how we knew then or how you knew then, because you were really a big proponent of Kelly Clarkson.
Oh, no, I was, because my family loved reality shows. So I was like, a moment like this, give me some Kelly Clarkson. Although she spanks her kids. I'm a little on the fence about that.
Does she? Does she talk about that?
Yeah. Yeah. And like how she's loud and proud. Like, I don't spank my kids. If you do, I mean, what happens in your house is none of my business. But I don't understand these people that are loud and proud about shit they shouldn't be proud of. Like, I never wipe my ass. Oh, isn't that normal? Ha, 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 ha. And then like have this laugh. And we're like, no, nobody else feels the same way. I don't know why you're trying to normalize this right now. Like, I don't wash my hands after I pee, right? That's normal. Like, no, don't. Or just bury the lead. Don't share that. We don't need to share everything.
You know who I hope sees this podcast is the producers of the Drew Barrymore show. She needs to be off the air. She's a terrible interviewer. Drew, I'm almost 40. You are definitely past 40. And you sit crooked on the couch. First, one, there's no way that 45-year-old joints bend like that. 2, the questions she asks are so terrible. And I can't, that's another pet peeve, is what asshole produces that show, and who in the afternoon is like, I'm going to put on the Drew Barrymore show.
I love Drew Barrymore, and my dad would always say, well, your jugs aren't as big as hers, which is so problematic in so many different ways. I can't even. Speaking of dad, here we go. And Kelly Clarkson, I remember after that show came out, he heard me singing in the shower. He goes, well, I just have to let you know, if you ever try to try out for American Idol, I'll stop you because you'll embarrass the family.
Oh my gosh. Do you remember your dad was my boss for a little while?
Yes. And then he ended up getting fired because of Steve Fallon. Remember Steve Fallon that always wore the orange? He was a year ahead of us.
What? That name sounds so familiar.
He was Mormon. Like, he was a wrestler. He always wore orange. I think he was like a cart boy or something. And you worked on the register, and like he pissed my dad off, and my dad just quit. Like, that was the Carrie Peterson earmark. I remember he worked for Sam's Club, got pissed off, quit. And then I was working somewhere and someone came in and we're talking about Sam's Club because they worked for him. I go, oh, my dad's Carrie Peterson. He looked me in the eye and then turned around and walked out. I don't know what my dad did, but he pissed them off. Classic dad.
Mine was a fond memory of I was doing something and I was asking some question, and I still think about this point of view because it's apt. Of it was like somebody wanted a price check on a tube of toothpaste was like $3, and they're like, it's on sale for $2.50, and he came over and he was like, Josh, by the time you look it up, who gives a shit about the 50 cents? Just keep the line moving. And what I remember from that lesson was more of just like, in perspective, it doesn't matter. The thing is, we have a line, get the people through. And I swear to God, I still remember that. It was like, there are times where I'm like, does this matter? No, keep it moving.
That's actually hilarious that you say that, because that was my, as a retail manager, point of view. Or if somebody's difficult, I would be like, you are not worth my time. I need you out of my face. So it's good to know that I got my good customer service from my dad, because definitely Mama Rose was not a customer service maven.
Yeah, I know. It's like, ma'am, you're burning holes in the clothes because you're folding them with a lit cigarette.
I'm fine. Sluts wear thongs anyway.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I have to tell you, okay, before we go, this guy messages me on Facebook, or he friends me, and it was somebody from Chicago, and it said it was a widow, and the name was Michael. And I was like, that's weird. So then he starts messaging me, and I realize that it was my mom's ex-boyfriend who cheated on her on prom night because she wouldn't sleep with him. So this guy said, hello, dear. Thanks for accepting my friend request. It's a pleasure to be your friend on Facebook. I'm sorry for intruding into your profile. I was actually searching for an old friend when I came across your profile on Facebook. Suggestion. You look nice and have an interesting profile as well. And then he just keeps like going on. And so I blocked him, but I was like, oh my God, he was probably looking up my mom, because I'm sure if you look up Rose Peterson, Sarah Peterson probably pops up because we're related. And the thing about this guy is she was in love with him. He was her boyfriend in high school. He cheated on her on prom night, which also mom's a liar. So take these all with a grain of salt. But in preschool, his daughter was in my preschool class. So they got back in contact. And I remember in Sandwich, I was maybe 8. And my mom, who was not religious, needed to find a Catholic church because she said she had to go to confession. My dad was out of town and she like drug us to a church to go to confession. So my whole life, I was like 8 and I was like, mom fucked somebody. Like I knew. I'm like, why else does she want to go to confession? So I think she slept with this guy and now he's reaching me out to me on Facebook. And it's just hilarious because it's such a Sarah thing to happen.
That is, God bless. Well, I appreciate that you have the wherewithal to just block him and turn it into a funny story.
And I have to, I'm definitely going to tell my therapist. I'll be like, so my mom's ex-boyfriend was staring at my tits in my profile picture. So
I know I had to tell mine the other day. I was like, oh, my ex. Yeah. I was like, I found out my ex is engaged and she was like, he is, how are you? How are you feeling? And I was like, I just wasn't expecting it. He was like, well, how did you find out? I was like, well, I was reading his mom's obituary, and it was just like, okay, that's.
And you're like, shut up. Sometimes you and I'm sure go down a rabbit hole every now and then of our old ways where it just feels good. And you're just like, I just want to be like this right now. Sometimes like to simmer in the
curious.
shit.
I didn't reach out, Oh my gosh. But I had written the most unhinged. I was going to send a card because his family was nice. And I wrote out this card. And Sarah, I saved the card because if I ever do stand up, my first act is going to be, I found out that my ex recently got engaged, by reading his mom's obituary. And here's the card that I wrote. And it was the most unhinged card that ended with hope all is well and gets better soon. And I had it in the envelope and I didn't have a stamp and I was on the phone with some friends and I read them the card and I was like, oh, that reminds me, I need to put a stamp on it. And so as I'm on the phone and we've already passed a couple of red flags that I shouldn't have sent it. The stamps that I had were like, I love you, thinking of you. And finally hearing myself say it out loud was the like, the universe has sent enough signals. Just leave it alone. She knows that you cared about her. You don't need to send the card. The family's. It's not going to help the family with any closure.
But there's some times where you're like, but I really want to do this.
It's the right thing to do. It's like, yeah,
maybe not the right thing to do. Wait, the MAGA guy got engaged?
Yeah. He started dating somebody like right after we broke up, who was like even heavier, super MAGA, bald. And so it's, God bless. God bless.
I would love to see these wedding pictures. I bet they do a MAGA wedding.
I did search for a registry and I didn't find one, which.
If you find one,
because there's still a little piece of you.
Oh, they care always. It's always because it's also like, and I don't know, this was how I was. If they didn't want to be with me, I'd be like, well, I didn't want to be with you, but how dare you not want to be with me? Do you know what a catch you had? Right. So that's, 100%. I think, what it is where you're like, why the fuck? Like, he had the best and now you're with this?
I could not be more grateful that I dodged that bullet eventually because it was where I struggled was like where I was making progress on just trying to learn from my mistakes and be a better person and just evolve and try and heal whatever trauma. His politics and that sort of rhetoric is very much stuck in being a victim, and it was just toxic. And so that was never going to be compatible, and leading with hate is just like, I don't want to be that person. I'm not interested in those people. And so I am very grateful that it didn't work out from that regard. But I agree. It's like, you should still want to be with me every day.
That's it. Seriously. I would, if you were straight, I'd be like Josh all day long. Sorry, Drew. Josh and I would just have a better time. Like you and I on a vacation would be hilarious. It'd have to be a throuple,
like the modern relationship. Now,
Yes. I feel like we should go out. The three of us should go on a cruise. I think we would be a hoot on a cruise.
I agree.
Well, there we go. Maybe we'll do a middle-aged millennial MILF cruise.
We're going to manifest it in 25.
That's it. And you can read your card on stage. That'll be your moment. You'll be a special guest.
In my luggage, they're going to be like, "What's this?" And you're like, "Just come to the comedy club at 7 tonight."
Yeah. And then this will take off. And then your lover will be there from Naked and Afraid, Jake. And he'll be like, "Oh my God, he is the man for me, honey." And I'm like, "I know. I'm just this good. I know."
It will be a celebrity couple, you know.
You will be. And we're making this happen. So just know. I love you, Josh.
I love you too. Is that how the kids do it these days?
No, I think they do it weird. I don't know. I'm not Gen Z. They have pronouns and they do things. I don't know.
That part of TikTok is out of my pay grade.
That's not your algorithm. You're like cat videos and planting shit.
Cooking. Yeah. And police car chases, you know?
Mine's like weed, podcast stuff, shopping, like hidden weed things, like put your blunts in here. I'm like, oh, that's nice. So our algorithms are very different. And I also have to thank you. You were my first guest and you were the perfect first guest.
Oh, I'm so happy when you reached out, and I have told a handful of people and they're like, well, what's the name? And I read it exactly as you wrote it. And it's 5 out of 5 people have laughed. And I think the name and the spirit of what you're doing, there's an audience for, and they want to hear it. And so I can't wait to see who you have on next, and we'll be cheering you on. I'm so happy that you're getting into this.
Well, thank you. And I love you. And I hope you have a great rest of your Sunday. And goodbye, my friends. Goodbye, my friend Josh. I love all of you. And don't forget to punch today in the dick.